Hi, welcome to Expert Talks. This is episode 3 of the interview with thought leaders in the analytics, AI, and transformation space. My name is Mahadevan Iyer, Maha for short. I'm your host for today, and I'm the co founder and CEO of Intelligent Marketplace for on demand actionable analytics. Our guest for today is Saswata Kar. Saswata is the Senior Director and Global Head of Data Analytics and Data Sciences at Philips Global Business Services. Prior to Philips, Saswata has had an illustrious career at Capital One, HSBC and GE Capital. He is also a forum member of Nasscom's Center of Excellence for IoT and AI. I'm sure aspiring data analysts, data scientists, and students looking to make data analytics as a career profession will learn hugely from Saswata's practical wisdom, and they will be able to pick inputs about the skills that they need to develop for being successful in this role. So Saswata, thank you for making time. It's a pleasure having you on Expert Talk.
Thank you, Maha. Pleasure is all mine.
Thank you. So Saswata, I went through your profile and you did your BSc in economics and statistics and then did your master's in economics, econometrics and corporate finance. So it's a great combination. So it will be great to understand from you, how has economics, which is essentially a macro subject, so to speak, and statistics is a very quantitative subject, how has it helped you in your analytics journey? If you can speak us through that.
Sure. That's definitely a nice question. To be honest, it was a seamless transition, I would say, from economic statistics and analytics. Given 20 plus years before, analytics was majorly around statistical modeling. Of course, at that point in time, when I introduced myself as a modeler, people used to look at me, okay, what does that mean? But now I think it's quite easy nowadays. People call it data science as well. But from a economic statistics point of view, everything that I studied has definitely helped in having this career in analytics, whether it is to do with mortgage analytics, where it is about mortgage loans and ensuring what type of models can be built using the studies or education that I had on corporate finance. 80% of whatever I had studied have actually been used, which is unlike a lot of other streams, I would say, Maha. So yeah, I mean, it has been quite a good transition, I would say.
Excellent. You've been with Philips now for nearly 9 years, right? And Philips is one company which is both in consumer product space as well as B2B space, right? So what are some of the key challenges that you find yourself working or Philips is working on, both in the consumer product space as well as the B2B space, and also in the context of a global pandemic from which we have all emerged, right? Are there different areas of focus? How do they go about it?
Sure. So from a Philips perspective, it's a 130-year-old organization, and it has gone through many changes from an industry perspective as well. It used to be a conglomerate. Now it has transformed into a health technology, giant, I would say. And the biggest focus is in R&D and innovation for the company. So in the health technology space, the products that Philips have span across the full cycle of health continuum. That's what it's called. And the starting phase, which is really home care, etc., that is where we have more of the consumer space that you just mentioned. So from a story perspective, it's really going across the entire spectrum of health, starting with home care, then treatment, then invasive treatment and non-invasive treatment, and then again back to home care. So that's really the cycle that Philips talks about. So from your question perspective, COVID pandemic and how the company has transformed itself, it's really, of course, we saw the supply chain disruptions which still continue, and that has been singular biggest challenge for the organization. And on the other side, I think we are coping up well, but yet not there. So from a macro perspective, that has been the biggest challenge for Philips, I would say.
Okay. So in the consumer product space, I mean, obviously understanding about consumer behavior, what they are purchasing and all that is very key. Unlike a retailer who's got first party data about consumers, their buying habits and all that, a consumer products company is in some sense disintermediated because there is someone through whom it is selling to its end consumers. So I read a blog article of yours where you said that Philips has actually used auxiliary or secondary data like Google mobility trends and possibly market sellout data to have a better understanding of consumers and being able to respond to their changing needs. So can you elaborate on this a little more?
Oh, absolutely. Essentially, this is called personal health for us. That's the business unit name. And within personal health, we have a lot of these different businesses like beauty and other different business segments that we operate in. There are two parts to it. One is we are one of the biggest sellers, I would say, with Amazons of the world. That is there. Of course, some data is shared from them. And we also have direct B2C. So we do have a lot of consumer data as well. So we mine the data regularly within the realms of all the privacy that is needed to really look at all the trends to be ahead of competition. So that is something that is kind of bread and butter for us. We also work with Amazons of the world and Flipkarts of the world to really see where the right segment is going. So that way we have been able to generate really high margins in that business. The other thing with Philips is mostly the quality for Philips is something that nobody can contest. And hence, even though from a pricing perspective, I think it's a little different in India, but the sales have been quite good, and India is one of the, I think it's a growth market for us, including China and some of the other geographies.
Got it. So in that space, within the, in terms of using Google mobility trends, for example, is there a practical example to talk about saying that, this is how you use it type of stuff to either understand the market potential or decide for a new product? Are there any practical examples that you can talk about?
Oh, we definitely look at, again, of course, I can't share the exact way the team does, but essentially we use that in conjunction with a lot of other data sets, right? And then we will look at the parameters that are, again, possible via, again, I keep on continuing to talk about data privacy, etc., because that's very important for us. So within the realms of what is possible, we use the information to get to the right insights which are actionable for us. For example, if there is a movement trend of population within particular segment to different region, we will make sure that in those different regions we have further availability in terms of our supply chain as well. So all that data is shared amongst all the business units so that we can use it to optimizing our sales, I would say.
Yeah, that's a great example. Now, one more point you mentioned, and that resonated well with me, was about using rapid analytics, quick turnaround or rapid analytics to unlock, value creation opportunities, and which can essentially help the business, maintain or develop its competitive edge. Right? You spoke about that. So again, how do you go about this? And I have a follow-through question after this, but I want to understand when you say rapid analytics, what are the approaches to ensure that analytics actually rapid and delivers to business?
That's a good question. That's like giving up the unique selling proposition, but it's okay. It can be shared. What is analytics? Analytics is nothing but common sense and backed by data, which nobody can question. So depending on what type of business problem we are solving, the biggest challenge is to do it within shortest time and the best quality, the insights of which nobody should be able to question. Now, to get to that, few winning, I would say, formula will be getting the right domain expert, right? And most of the times what I have seen is best is to get somebody who is seeped into the problem, get that person or that team, and then marry that with the latest technology, a business analyst from the analytics team who can work in tandem to look at the shortest possible solution by time and quality. And I would say the technique that needs to be used. So it is important that the person is very much conversant with the fastest algorithms in Excel as well as fastest algorithms in Python. And the backend team is there to do the work, but there should be a knack to understand whether this can be solved by Excel. If it can be solved by Excel, then do that Excel and solve it. Again, it depends also the quantum or what is the size of the problem that we are trying to solve, right? So if the size is not that big, we should not spend a lot of time. So it really depends on what is the expected outcome from the stakeholders as well as alignment of the stakeholders, what they want. If they are aligned, if we are aligned on the outcome, we should look at the shortest possible way to do it. So that is what rapid analytics to me is. And you can always use Lean Six Sigma method as well to get to, I mean, that is also analytics, to be honest. So get to the outcome in the shortest possible time with the best quality. That is rapid analytics to me, using whichever technology which works.
No, absolutely. Absolutely. So the reason I ask this is that, as I see it, there are two ends of the analytics spectrum, so to speak, right? So one is the rapid or quick turnaround analytics, which is essentially companies or businesses have a problem saying my sales is plateauing, not growing, or my conversion rates are poor, customer complaints are increasing, whatever, or a competition has come in type of stuff, right? So tell me, what do I need to do now, right? Which is constrained for time. The business is time poor because they need to respond. And then the other part of end of the spectrum is, really investing in deep learning, AI, ML models, and then, multi-generation type of projects so that they are recommendation models which start working well with delivery systems in the company. From your own experience, how do you see the projects being divided in this? And where do you see a business connect happening a lot more?
My overall experience is a rough 50-50 split in that in the two spectrum that you or ends of the spectrum that you mentioned. The first part is essential for businesses to survive. The second part is to get 5x, 10x out of what investment is made on analytics. And the second part needs time to get to, right? The problem happened. The first part I think is very clear. I mean, we must do it. We have business leaders who are rooting for it. Nobody wants to wait. So let's do the quick and dirty analysis, whatever is required to get to my solution so that I can increase my share. I go through the same, descriptive analytics, prescriptive analytics, the continuum that we keep speaking in analytics. But on the other hand, this whole long-term projects that you mentioned about, for that, I think, and for both, I think key is proper planning and properly thought out expected outcome and very realistic understanding of what do these people need, these stakeholders or partners or customers or whatever, what do they actually need? So depending on that, we will need to, I mean, we always decide on which is the right path to go to, right? If it is a huge problem that we are talking about or a problem that will come in future after 5 years, both these cases you have to think long term and think in terms of accuracy. So what is the trade-off between accuracy rates? Are you okay with accuracy of 80%? Then you go for the first part, right? If you want 100% accuracy because there is no room for 1% error, then you go for the second part. So multiple parameters. At the end of the day, it all depends on outcome. But my advice to everybody who does it is keep it finite, because most of the times you make it more than 1 year, it doesn't work. So keep it finite. It will be my advice from an analytics point of view.
Absolutely. Now, in the GBS, obviously, in terms of intellect, data capability, reasoning, all that, Philips, and for that matter, any MNC or any large organization would take care to ensure that the capability is built that way. However, context is something. While Philips will have products in India as well, and the exposure is likely to be there for even people working in the GBS. Um, International market exposure is limited, right? So how do you ensure that the team which is there working with you also has access to that type of context? So are there any approaches or frameworks that you follow so that they are able to really empathize with what's really happening in the market and engage with stakeholders at that level?
Yeah. So a few things that we always take care of. First of all, Philips, like any other organization, we may sit in Bangalore or Chennai or Gurgaon, but we all have worldview. Given the cosmopolitan nature of the cities, as well as the sheer number of roles and number of people that we have here, most of the roles are global in nature. So you will find very less roles which are working with only teams from Bangalore, for example, or from Chennai or Gurgaon. So that way, I think it's quite global. From a company perspective, I've seen that with other organizations also where I have worked for. Uh, we do have a lot of R&D facility and factories in India. And hence, what is strongly encouraged is to have those visits when a person in the first 3 months of a person joining, so that they have a view of what is health technology, what are those products about, IGT or some device that we build, how much complex it can only be understood by seeing it. So and the complexity that is there in supply chain for each of these giant machines to be built uh, can be understood at least a little bit by looking at them. So we make it a point that they are part of those visits in India. So we are fortunate that we have quite a few factories in India. So we keep visiting. The other way to do it is we have a lot of virtual tour sessions that we engage with. So that is very common for us. And we use it very much for our people to be aware of what we are talking about, Maha.
Okay, nice. In one of your articles, you mentioned about IoT and the importance of IoT in terms of really understanding data about usage. And I think you were referring more to the healthcare products and all that. So, just some examples of how IoT exhaust data is used for improving customer experience and business effectiveness. If you can just talk about a couple of examples.
Sure. And I will talk about industry, not really about the company. So from an industry perspective, IoT data is all pervasive now. Everywhere it is getting used, whether it is to do with auto sector, where if you have these sensors, I get to know when what will go wrong and hence repair it or do a preventive maintenance. Preventive maintenance will be the right word. So all those things are very much common with health technology as well and any other technology. So data is there. I think the bigger question is which problem to solve. So which are the bigger problems? How do we solve them? Data is in abundance, all the sensor data, all the IoT, because everything is connected. Given that everything is connected, uh, every organization, let's say if there's any organization in the health technology space, we can always get to know which machine will go down much faster by looking at all the parameters of that, and hence uh, give a replacement product much before the dates, right? And that drives huge customer satisfaction. Customers will be very happy. Hey, you know me much better than what I know about myself. That's the thing, right? It's all about knowing customers more than what they know about themselves, their vitals. Of course, we don't get into that space, but eventually at some point in time that will happen, right? People will know about other people or rather these technology companies will know about people and their parameters just looking at some control chart, right? And we can predict a lot more about them and do preventive actions, take those preventive actions, right? Which is actually quite it's a reality now, right? So it's already happening, and it is going to accelerate with where we stand and the type of data that we have, Maha.
Got it. So, With IoT and all the stuff, the rate of data creation or collection, if you will, is obviously exponentially growing, right? The speed of data is actually far higher than the ability to make sense of it and deliver it, right? So companies obviously have a typical conundrum. What should I collect? How much should I collect? Or should I collect when I have the ability to deliver something out of it? So for example, if I were to say, if I make a recommendation of a blue t-shirt to Saswata, he will buy it. It's a great thing to analyze. But if I don't have the ability to deliver that recommendation to you, right, in my physical store or in a physical marketplace or whatever, or even on the e-commerce marketplace, then that's just a recommendation. It's a good insight to have, but you can't act on it, right? And so I keep hearing two sides of the argument saying, so there's a Marisa Mayer who says that collect all data if you can, and there are people who say collect data what is just about right, because otherwise it's both a cost and a risk. Uh, so just your thoughts on that.
My view will be in between both the views that you mentioned, right? There's something called recency frequency, which I'm sure a lot of people have heard about. I think data that we collect needs to be recent. I will not define recent because then it becomes too much, too much micro. I think recency is important. So recent data is important. Before that, whatever happened, I think we can always summarize and keep it to keep the cost low. And the type of data that we should collect should be centered around the problems that we have seen already. It should be a union of all data sets that has helped us in past, but at a very granular level so that I can do all the slicing, dicing that is needed. So typically, health technology companies have this 5 to 7 year data policy, right? From a retention perspective. Though it's a policy, but I like it because that's like recent 5-7 years data you keep. Before that, you can probably make it summarized because anyway, those trends, even if you use, will not be applicable given the rapid pace of technology change. So that will be my view, Maha.
Excellent. Now, again, one more point on the IoT space. Right. For B2B products, healthcare products and all that, the cost of the product itself or the price of the product is high. So, the unit economics for putting, IoT tags or IoT, RFID tags, whatever, whichever type of thing is, somewhere it gets consumed in the part of the price and it's manageable. Consumer product companies, on the other hand, while they would love to have the type of data coming out of it, it's a bit of a unit economic problem. If I put it, the cost of the product goes up. What is the value I get against the cost I incur in terms of trying to put RFID tags or whatever, right? I want to put beacons in stores, but I don't know what I will get out of it because the usage could be limited. I want to put RFID tags, but the cost per unit will actually go up for me, right? So do you see the cost of RFID or IoT over a period of time uh, coming down and the consumption and the adoption increasing? Do you see that happening?
So I definitely see that happening. Anyway, every 18 months, everything goes down by many percentage points and many times. But your question, I think, is more about finding the right market for such products. And at the end of the day, it's all about, for a customer also, it's about um, the threshold, which makes me a converter into using such device vis-a-vis I using I can use a toothbrush, which is called Sony Care for our company, from our company, which does all that. So whatever it tells me what type of, and it will give me a warning if I'm not brushing my tooth properly. So it's the cost is a little higher, of course, in comparison with the normal ones. But then depending on at what age bracket I am and what type of care I want, I think anyway, everybody is moving towards improving our lives, right? At some point in time, there will be folks who will be interested in improving life and paying that cost for it. And that market earlier also existed, now also exist. So it is always there. It's just that what trade-off I will make from a cost perspective to acquire that product as a customer.
And you feel that the over a period of time, like every 18 months, the cost will continue to keep going down, and focus on health or
Correct.
lifestyle will ensure
Correct.
that adoption continues to increase.
Correct. So this is again betting on future. So your cost will go down anyway. And if I get those attractive features of telling me, hey, you know what, in 6 months' time, you need to get a root canal treatment. So I will have a better brushing pattern to delay the root canal treatment by another 6 months. That's a huge advantage for me as a person. So it really depends on what will be my psychology based on what the product is offering me. And if I buy it, then that means that I really like what they offer.
Nice. Moving on. Now, low code, no code platforms have started coming in, right? OpenAI, everybody's talking of OpenAI, right? From an area where we came from, where you used to use Six Sigma or statistics, you needed to know the why behind what you are doing in terms of applying those analytics or algorithms or whatever, right? And then it became with neural networks, became almost like a black box where you put in data, something comes out, you do practical test versus control or train the data and say, okay, as long as I don't have to really explain what is happening and the business is seeing the results, then it became a bit of a black box, right? OpenAI is possibly taking it a little more further, right? You tell it and it writes a code, you apply it. So how do you see this future of AI going? Will it become a lot more context and the tech skills, dependence on tech skills reducing over a period of time? If the person knows how to ask a question and why he or she is asking a question and the ability to integrate, will that become a lot more important than really understanding the substance behind why we are doing it?
I think the importance of 5 why and importance of what is going behind will always be there. But that is what I and you will say. If you go to millennials, they will have a different viewpoint. I think it will be a balance of both. So definitely the need to understand everything will go down. The larger question is that something that we would like our next generation to go? Is that the right path for them to go? It will always be a balance. There will always be need for technologists to create these models at the back end. And I think algorithm signaling specialists, I'm just coining the term now, or algorithm routing specialists, those type of new jobs will come up, right? Where which algorithm to use when, there will be like police you have and police inspectors or those who give direction to traffic, right? Similar type of jobs will come where at the end of the day, at least some context of what we are talking about needs to be there. Otherwise, it will be very difficult. Also, one is whether how much context I need to know. But on the other hand, you also see there's greater regulatory scrutiny that is coming everywhere. So it is not the case that I can go away not explaining what made me create what machine where I am. That is going to increase manifold. You see that happening across the board, Google, CCI in India or any other organization, any other country, what is happening. So that is going to increase day by day. So the explainability part will never go away, Maha, I think.
Valid point. I think explainability for business and then given increasing regulation, explainability for regulation and government, bodies will continue to exist. So yeah, so for data scientists and analysts to be successful, I think you're right. They will need to have the ability to explain what they're doing. They could get away with somehow.
Yeah. And if I may add one thing, Maha. So see, whatever AI that we see now is more around inexact science. So if you talked about ChatGPT or OpenAI and all that, right? So Google, it is all based on whatever literature that has written over thousands and thousands of years, right? Giant, huge machine learning models, algorithms being run, and really nice answers they give, right? I've tried myself as well. Really gives better answer than what you ask me, I think. But or I answer whatever question you are asking, Maha. But the problem is when we get into exact sciences. If you think of the car industry, where companies have spent billions and billions of dollars on making a car which is autonomous, right? The research is still on. I'm not saying we've not advanced. We've advanced, but we have not reached the level where it can happen. Why? Because of the thousand parameters and variables and features. Combination of that makes the world a very complex place. So you still have rovers in Mars which fail to land, right? So that is all exact. So me putting my hand on the table is much more difficult to predict than uh, reading something in literature and answering a question which what ChatGPT said and what I said can be different. And tolerance level to say that ChatGPT is good is very high in that case because it is not exact. So I would say, I think, of course, AI is going lens now, but we still have a lot of room for moving ahead or making improvements.
That's interesting. So what you're saying is explainability is one reason why context and knowledge is important. The other part you're saying is also that where low tolerance levels are there, like a flight analytics, for example, or autonomous car or whatever, where the failure acceptance is absolutely minimal, you will need a lot more of exact decision sciences compared to something where the tolerance level could be high. For example, I want to write a content. It's okay if it is here and there, but as long as the sum and substance of what I'm communicating is okay. You're saying those places, the black box types of things, or the OpenAI type of stuff can work.
Correct.
Interesting. Nice. Okay. Excellent. Now, so what would be your advice to someone, 18-year-old who were to tell me, Shashwata, what should I focus on? If 10, 12 years, 15 years down the line, I want to be, leading analytics or transformation for organization. What are the key skills that I need to develop now? So what would that be?
Curiosity mindset. I think that is what I would say. To inculcate a habit of understanding what I'm doing. I think that is the biggest thing. I mean, everything else can be taught, from whether it's data science or AI or mechanical engineering, whatever that perspective is and subject is. But I think what is important is that attitude to ask questions and finding out the solutions. Not only asking questions, but finding out the solutions, problem solving skills. I think that is what keeps us going. And that is what makes us different from a lot of other people, I would say, and keeps us going basically. And discovering new things, challenging status quo. I think those are traits which are very important um, for a successful, I would say, career, not only analytics, any other career.
Sure, sure. I was also reading or listening to one of your blogs or interviews where you spoke of, how standard work can get automated, RPA and AI and all that, right? So how important, and you said that's linear, right? So some of this is very linear. Right? But in the new world where it is VUCA and everything changes very fast, right? Uh, how important will be the ability to have a contrarian point of view or ability to think out of the box, or ability to engage with other people and build perspectives, right? Do you see that as a need going forward for people, because change is happening so fast you can only learn so much?
I think without contrarian viewpoint, world will really become very linear. So contrarian viewpoint is a must. Uh, even to continue the linear path, you need friction. I mean, even if you think of physics, right? Without friction, there cannot be movement. So friction is very, very important for anything, including in physics and in economics and in workplace as well. So there has to be that healthy environment where there is open culture to speak up and say why, and because that question will stimulate in my head, how do I answer this question? If I'm not able to explain, then my logic or my policy does not stand. At the end of the day, I'm answerable to whether it's my employees or my boss or whoever, right? And hence, it is very important to have a contrarian view. Now, you did mention about linearity. The context in which I made that comment, Maha, was it is very easy to use these technologies called like RPA when it is linear in nature. Whenever you have, but to get to, and I'm talking about practical situations and practical solutions. So, of course, it's RPA is buzzword. Everybody says RPA. It's actually not that difficult because it just models the repetitive behavior and does it. But to get to repetitive behavior, there is a lot of investment of time of a lot of subject matter folks, subject matter experts, to really make it a repetitive process, which means that you are actually getting into a discipline mode. You are becoming disciplined. And this is what a repetitive process looks like. So that is one. The challenge is in that space where subject matters are sitting together to create a repetitive process, which becomes RPA enabled. How do we automate that part? That is the bigger challenge. How do we use artificial intelligence to automate that part? And that's what I think some of these technologies are anyway doing, right? In ChatGPT and all that, they are trying to do that. Or at least with whatever information and literature they have, they are trying to do that. But that is where I think some of these, again, new things that we keep hearing is probably playing. But I need to get that answer. Not yet there yet, Maha.
Got it. You also mentioned where I read somewhere that the challenge you see in data analytics or the future of data analytics is how do you integrate diverse viewpoints to get a end-to-end, holistic working solution type of stuff. So can you expand a little more on that?
If we come from the same school of thought, same school of philosophy, it is likely that our thought processes and our recommendations will be similar. The subjects where those policies will be implemented can be very different. And hence, policy making should always take into account diverse opinion so that it is 80% correct on the subjects on which this treatment is meted out. And again, by subject, I'm talking about data here, but that is how it is. So it is very important to make sure that we are taking into account a lot of diverse opinion. Of course, the final decision we take, but those viewpoints will strengthen why, what insight is being used in which manner.
Got it. And it's also important in taking everybody together towards the solution so that
that is one thing. I mean, I'll give you an example. I think that will become easier. Huh? So,
okay.
For example, 2005, I was working in the auto sector for HSBC Auto, meaning car finance division. Now, we used to use at that point in time, 20 years before, only data which is available within the bank, bank data only, or whatever consumer data that we had. We started using external data as well that time. Recently, we started taking some of the FICO scores and all that were available that time. And we started seeing the internal models were all giving us very good results in, let's say, I think this was 2007. Results from a reposition perspective or from a collections of overdue perspective, it was very good results if we look at internal data. The moment we started adding auto sector data from FICO, we started seeing, hey, you know what? I see a little bit of risk here. And then when we added a little bit of credit card data as well, we saw that the chances of overdue were increasing. And then we kind of took some policy risks. It was a contrarian view. So I said, why don't we look at external data as well? Why are we only using, whatever data? That time it was unheard of, people using external data and all that. But we kind of took some risk measures and all that. And that bore fruit. You had 2008 crash, right? Subprime crisis, right?
Correct.
But we could see that in the data. We did not know that it is called subprime crisis or whatever it is.
Correct.
And it was mortgage market, not the same market. But we could see that already in 2006, 2007 in the worsening of the dues and all that, those different parameters. So that is why I said contrarian view of accommodating other views most of the times are beneficial only. Of course, you decide whether you will use it or not, right? Sometimes it's spurious correlation as well.
Correct. No, great example. Saswata, thank you so much for making time to have a chat with us. It was a pleasure talking to you and really, learned from this interaction over the last 40 minutes. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Maha. Thanks for inviting me. I also liked the questions. Some of them were googly and, in swing, but that's what the challenge is. And it's always great to speak with a person like yourself or a leader like yourself, Maha. Thanks.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Talk to you. Bye.